guys? Paulie Malignaggi, Paulie TV, Fight Day, Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. I know we had our combat and coffee chat yesterday, but since then we've had the weigh-in, and there's some stuff I had some opinions about this weigh-in. You know, I think I do like animated weigh-ins. Obviously, I think everybody does. I think it gets you psyched up for the fight. I didn't, I'll be honest. Bernard Hopkins saying like there's it's not a place for that kind of thing, or him putting his hands on Gervonta Davis. I can understand everything getting animated, right? So Davis kind of has a right to get aggravated in that regard. He's not only is he trying to promote the fight, but he's also trying to win that psychological war in that moment. And Hopkins is obviously trying to not let him, pushing him away and stuff like that. Let's not forget that when it comes down to it, the psychology of a fight, some things have to slide. Later on, everything can be cool, but some things have to slide because you got to get in your opponent's mind. And the psychology of a fight is very, very important. Let's not forget that Hopkins did things like step on the Puerto Rican flag when he was promoting the Trinidad fight. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes to that kind of stuff, again, I mean, do you condone like things that go in the extreme? Not really, but also, when you're trying to get into the mind of a guy you're fighting, there's a lot of things that you probably have to do, might want to do, that maybe you wouldn't normally do. Maybe that might be out of your character, I mean, Muhammad Ali, I think, was the master at this, way back in the day. Maybe he was the first one to do these kind of things, and you just get inside a guy's mind. So I don't think, Gervonta, all the theatrics at the weigh-in with Gervonta, I think you got to let Gervonta Davis, be Gervonta Davis in that moment, no matter what it is. I don't know what he was trying to do. Bernard was trying to push him away or separate them or whatnot. You got to let Davis play his psychology games there and get in Ryan's face and do all that stuff. And then you can't really complain about it. I mean, listen, unless blows are thrown where you're going to risk the fight happening, I mean, you can't really complain about it. There's a big crowd there. It's animated. There's high emotion. But again, you're doing what you have to get in a guy's head. So, I don't know. That was my... thought it was a little bit on the hypocritical side on Hopkins to try to defend that try to defend doing that to Gervonta Davis as Davis was in that stare down at the weigh-in. As far as the fight is concerned, again, one on Fight Day, I mentioned yesterday in Combat and Coffee that I was watching a little bit of Rolly Romero this week because I was covering it for ProBox TV, where the network that I work for. I was covering Romero's possible upcoming fight with Pacquiao, which now obviously has been canceled since Pacquiao's failed the drug test. But I was watching some Romero stuff, and I started to realize that Romero's height and range is really, he gave a lot of problems to Tank Davis. And so I was, and it wasn't until Romero got too reckless himself and fell into a power counter shot by Davis that the fight ended. So I started to really assess things, and I said, you know what, man? I was like, Davis has fast hands, but his feet are kind of slow, and his ability to control range is difficult against guys that are tall that know how to control that range. I saw yesterday in one of the comments, somebody mentioned Mario Barrios was tall, but Mario Barrios had a non-existent jab. We already knew that even in the Thurman fight, when he fought Thurman, that Mario Barrios' jab was non-existent. A tall guy needs to have a jab if he's going to control range. The tall guy with no jab is not going to control range. You can touch with that lead left hand once in a while, but that's not going to maintain your range unless you're actually using the jab. And I think Garcia does know how to use that range control left hand, but also with the jab as well. Unlike Barrios. Barrios, for me, as I said yesterday, I struggled to see how Barrios had the frame he had and had no ability at all to fight at range. None at all. Understand how to fight at range. I don't understand how to maintain range. A cognizance of what range was. It blew me away. How nobody ever taught that kid that. But Garcia has a sense of range. He has a sense of distance of where he wants to fight, and he has a sense of how he wants to fight at that distance. And I think a fighter like that gives Tank Davis problems. I went over the resumes yesterday. I believe that Campbell is the best win on both guys' records, but overall, Davis has a better resume overall. And I'm not talking about resume when you look at the opponent and you look at their resumes, because when you tell me, you know, Santa Cruz has the best resume out of all the opponents they've all fought, but Santa Cruz is a blown-up featherweight who fought at one gear all the time. So a blown-up featherweight who fights at one gear all the time is tailor-made when he goes up in weight, especially if that one gear is coming forward trying to take it to you. You got a guy who's naturally several weight classes below you, now trying to take the fight to you. That's not going to go well. That's not going to over well. He's always going to, a guy like that's always going to get knocked down, right? Or always going to get beat up. So that's why I don't rate the Santa Cruz fight as much. It was more, you know, in name, it was a big recognizable win in name, but in reality, it wasn't that big of a win, you know? As I said yesterday, I think Tank Davis' best win is Pedraza. I think Garcia's best win is Luke Campbell. And I think overall the best win on their resume is Luke Campbell, because Pedraza, although Pedraza I think is very good, I think Pedraza at 130 was very, very, very weight drained. I had been in the fighter meetings with Pedraza, even the fights before that, and he was just staying at the weight class just because he had a world title. So it was always going to go until the wheels fell off at 130 pounds for Pedraza, because he was trying to keep the world title and defend it and make money. And so he was not going to move up until he lost that title. So eventually Tank did him a favor practically and beat him up, because when he moved to 35 and 40, being less weight drained, he actually, you know, kind of rejuvenated his career after that loss a little bit, and even won another title. But Campbell never won a world title, but Campbell also only got title shots against a prime Linares and a prime Lomachenko. You know, again, I stress the word prime because Tank Davis has, I think, a win over past his prime Gamboa. Devin Haney has wins over past his prime Gamboa, and Linares. These are not the same. Campbell fought a prime Linares for the world title challenge, and a prime Lomachenko. And so when you fight a prime Linares and prime Lomachenko for the world title, most guys would not become world champions. Even guys that have become world champions, they became world champions because they didn't fight a prime Linares and a prime Lomachenko for the world titles, you know. So that's why I feel like Campbell is a guy who has not gotten the credit he deserves, because this is a fighter who was vastly improving as his career was going on. I remember early on I was not that impressed with Luke Campbell either, but as his career went on, he became more and more impressive. And it was just, again, for me, he didn't win a world title because the title shots he wound up getting were against the very, very best of the sport. You know, some of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the sport at the time he fought them. Now let's go back with Tank Davis. Tank Davis, the firepower. How is Davis gonna get inside and control range, eliminate this range from Garcia? Also, how do you take the confidence away from Garcia? Because I think early on, Davis always starts slow, but I think it's very, very important for Davis to take away the confidence from Garcia. This is Garcia's biggest fight, right? I mean, Davis's biggest fight too. They're each other's most difficult opponent, but how do you take away the play from Garcia, who? That's a guy who psychologically we still aren't sure about in this kind of fight, right? Davis, we've seen him in the big moment constantly, you know. We've seen him against fights where, okay, maybe going in they weren't that tough, but then they turn out to be tough. Like, nobody knew Isaac Cruz, so nobody could expect Isaac Cruz was going to be this tough. But when Isaac Cruz put himself in that difficult fight with, when Davis put himself in that difficult fight with Isaac Cruz, while Cruz was just a last-minute replacement, ultimately he wound up being a very, very difficult opponent. So Davis had to kind of adjust that mindset on the fly, and he did. So Davis is kind of, for me, a bit more battle-tested. And you can say, Luke dropped Garcia, and Garcia got up off the canvas to beat Luke Campbell. Yeah, but after that, instead of kind of shining with that moment, Ryan kind of faded away after that moment and wasn't as busy and and honestly diminished his level of opposition since, you know. I think Ryan is dangerous early on. I think Davis starts fights a little slower, and I think that something like that would have to change. But going by what they usually do, if Ryan is dangerous early and Tank is dangerous late, and Tank starts slowly, I think there's a play here for Ryan to be controlling the range and getting a stoppage in the first half of the fight. I think if the fight goes too long, though, Tank starts to take over more and more and more, and it ends up becoming more advantageous to Tank. I'm going to go with, as you guys said yesterday with Combat, heard me yesterday in Combat and Coffee, I'm going with Ryan Garcia by round 5 KO. I think Ryan has one-punch knockout power, so does Davis. Again, Davis doesn't really let go of that power with as much enthusiasm when he's not comfortable with the range, and it takes him half of the fight to get comfortable with the range, especially when he's a much shorter guy, and in this fight he's a much shorter guy. So, and it's not because he's scared, it's just he just, you know, he plays it smart, but sometimes he plays it too patient, in my opinion, against guys where he doesn't have to play it as patient. So if he played it that patient against guys where he didn't have to play it as patiently, against Ryan Garcia, if he plays it too patiently, honestly, he's going to allow Ryan to get a lot of confidence in the early part of the fight. And again, Ryan's firepower could start to land, because Ryan's going to be, you know, controlling that range and leveraging his heavy shots early in the fight. If Gervonta doesn't give him something to worry about in the first half of the fight, or at least fire something back, or fire something in a lead capacity to give Ryan something to worry about in order when he's closing the gap. So I think Ryan can win this fight in the first half of the fight. If the fight starts getting too much into the deep end, I think Gervonta takes over the fight, and it's probably more advantageous to Gervonta Davis. I don't see this fight going the distance. My pick is going to be Ryan Garcia by 5th round KO. I saw one of the comments yesterday. It said, "Oh, well, how does Tank get KO'd in 5 if Fortuna got KO'd in 6?" Well, men's a genius. That's because Fortuna wasn't trying to win the fight. Tank is going to try to win the fight. Fortuna was trying to survive. So a guy who survives will usually go a few more rounds. So I think I'll see it that way. Again, if it starts going too many rounds, I got Davis starting to take over the fight. But I see it as a 5th round KO for Ryan Garcia tonight in a mega blockbuster pay-per-view, which somehow is a mega blockbuster pay-per-view despite it not being for a title, and neither guy has had a world title in a long time.